The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Defense Council stretched a kilometer into the artificial sky of Station Zero, its crystalline walls displaying real-time feeds from 10,000 worlds. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the podium, her worn leather shoes a stark contrast to the liquid metal platforms the alien representatives floated upon. She took a deep breath, tasting the slightly metallic recycled air. "Distinguished members of the Council," she began, her voice steady despite the dismissive glances from the towering figures around her. "Earth presents its solution to the hive mind threat." With a gesture, she activated the holographic display. Instead of the expected weapon systems or battleship designs, simple lines of code filled the air. The reaction was immediate. Murmurs rippled through the assembly, followed by barely concealed laughter. Ambassador Exelith of the Meridian Collective, their biomechanical form shimming with neural activity, leaned forward. "Dr. Chen," they said, metallic tendrils twisting in what humans had learned was their expression of amusement. "Surely this is a preliminary presentation. Where are your quantum arrays, your consciousness-based targeting systems?" Sarah maintained her composure. "This is our complete defense proposal. An adaptive algorithm that..." "Numbers," interrupted High Commander Vexthor of the Arcturus Legion, his crystalline body flashing red with apparent anger. "While the Hiveman devours star systems, Earth offers us mathematics." More laughter echoed through the chamber. Sarah watched as the various alien representatives exchanged knowing looks. The Meridians with their hybrid consciousness technology, the Arcturians with their crystal-based quantum computers, the Zethkla with their psychic battle networks, all of them had presented increasingly complex solutions to combat the Hivemind. All had failed. "The Hivemind has adapted to every weapon we've deployed," Sarah continued, ignoring the derision. "It learns, evolves, and overcomes. But in doing so, it follows patterns. Patterns we can predict. Patterns." Exlith's tendrils twisted faster. "We have devoted entire neural clusters to analyzing the Hivemind's behavior. Our bioquantum processors calculate millions of variables per nanosecond. Are you suggesting your simple code can do better?" Sarah pulled up another display, showing a series of attack patterns from previous Hivemind incursions. "Look here," she pointed to seemingly random data points. "Every adaptation, every evolution follows mathematical principles, so basic we almost missed them. The Hivemind isn't just artificial intelligence. It's bound by the fundamental rules of information theory." Theory. Vexthor's crystalline form pulsed brighter. "The Arcturus Legion lost 3 colony worlds last solar cycle. We need weapons, not theories." The council chamber erupted in agreements. Sarah watched as her presentation was dismissed, the alien representatives already turning to discuss the next item on their agenda. Only one figure remained focused on her display: Admiral Zena of the Zethkla. Their ethereal form barely visible except for 2 piercing eyes that studied the scrolling code with unusual intensity. As Sarah gathered her materials, a message flashed across her neural implant. It was from her team back on Earth. "They'll understand when they see it work." She allowed herself a small smile. The aliens, for all their advanced technology, had become so focused on complexity they'd forgotten the power of simplicity. Back in her temporary quarters aboard Station Zero, Sarah reviewed the real data, the information she couldn't share with the Council. Her team had been running simulations for months, feeding their algorithm battlefield data from every Hivemind encounter. The results were always the same. Their system predicted the Hivemind's adaptations with 99.97% accuracy. Her neural implant pinged again. This time, it was Admiral Zena requesting a private meeting. Sarah hesitated. The Zethkla were known for their ability to read surface thoughts, and there was much about the algorithm she needed to keep secret. But they were also known for their wisdom. The meeting request came with a location: Observation Deck 7, in 1 hour. Sarah spent that time reinforcing her mental barriers, a technique developed specifically for dealing with telepathic species. When she arrived, she found the Admiral already there, their translucent form barely visible against the backdrop of stars. Your algorithm. Zena's thoughts echoed directly in Sarah's mind. It sees something we've missed, doesn't it? Sarah chose her words carefully. The hive mind isn't as complex as we think. It's like water. It always flows downhill, following the path of least resistance. We've been trying to stop the river when we should be predicting its course. And your predictions? They work. In simulations, yes. Zena's form shifted, creating patterns that reminded Sarah of Earth's aurora borealis. The Council fears simple solutions because they believe simple things can be easily defeated. They forget that the most fundamental laws of the universe are also the simplest. A warning flashed across Sarah's neural implant. Activity at the edge of known space. The hive mind was on the move again. Multiple colony worlds were reporting strange readings, the kind that usually preceded an attack. It seems, Zena's thoughts carried a note of grim amusement. We may see your algorithm tested sooner than expected. Sarah's hand instinctively moved to the quantum communicator at her belt. Her team would be preparing the system now, running the calculations, predicting where the hive mind would strike first. The aliens wanted complex solutions, massive weapons, reality-bending technology. Instead, they were about to witness the power of elegant mathematics and human ingenuity. Sometimes, she said, watching as emergency signals began lighting up across the galactic map, the simplest solution is the right one. The stars seemed to flicker in agreement as the first reports of the hive mind's new offensive began to arrive. The emergency alert sirens aboard Station Zero had been wailing for 3 hours straight. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the Council's war room, surrounded by frantic alien representatives as holographic displays showed the hive mind's simultaneous attacks on 7 frontier worlds. The Meridian Collective's biomechanical fleet was scattered, their advanced neural networks overwhelmed. The Arcturus Legion's crystal ships shattered like glass against the new variant of Hiveman vessels. Impossible. Xlith's tendrils writhed in distress. Our predictive matrices show no correlation between these attack patterns. The Highmund has never demonstrated this level of strategic complexity before. Sarah watched the tactical displays, her neural implant processing the incoming data streams. While the aliens saw chaos, she saw something else entirely. Her algorithm was highlighting subtle connections, mathematical constants that repeated across every battlefield. There, she pointed to a seemingly random series of fleet movements. The hive mind isn't being random. It's following a fractal pattern. Each attack is a smaller version of the larger strategy. High Commander Vexthor's crystalline form vibrated with skepticism. Preposterous. Our quantum computers have analyzed every possible strategic permutation. There is no pattern here, only chaos designed to overwhelm our defenses. Sarah pulled up her own display, overlaying the algorithm's predictions onto the battle map. Watch this sector. She indicated a seemingly quiet region of space. The hive mind will strike here next, in approximately 17 minutes. The alien representatives exchanged doubtful looks. The sector she indicated was of minimal strategic value, with no major colonies or military installations. But Sarah knew better. Her algorithm had identified it as the next logical point in the pattern, like a mathematician predicting the next number in a complex sequence. 16 minutes and 43 seconds later, a massive hive-mind fleet emerged from hyperspace exactly where she had predicted. The war room erupted in chaos. How did you? Xlith began, but Sarah was already working on her console, the algorithm processing new data. It's not just about where they appear, she explained, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. Watch their formation. Every ship's position corresponds to a specific mathematical ratio. The same ratio we see in the growth patterns of Earth's nautilus shells, in the arrangement of sunflower seeds, in the spiral of galaxies. Admiral Zena floated closer, their ethereal form pulsing with interest. The golden ratio. Similar, but more complex. The hive mind is building its strategies on fundamental mathematical principles that exist throughout nature. Principles so basic we almost missed them because we were looking for complexity. The tactical displays updated again. 3 more Meridian colonies had gone dark. The Arcturus Legion was reporting critical failures in their quantum defense networks. But Sarah's algorithm was already plotting the next moves, predicting the hive mind strategy like a chess player seeing 10 moves ahead. Their adaptation isn't random either, she continued, highlighting new data points. Each new variant of their ships, each modification to their weapons, follows the same mathematical progression. They're not creating new strategies. They're iterating through a predetermined set of variations. If what you say is true, Xlith's voice carried a note of desperate hope. Can your algorithm predict their next adaptation? Sarah nodded, but her expression remained grave. It can, but prediction alone isn't enough. We need to use this knowledge to strike back. The problem is, the hive mind learns from each encounter. Every time we reveal what we know, we risk them changing their underlying patterns. High Commander Vexthor, who had been silently watching the battles unfold, finally spoke. You wish to deploy your defense system. Yes, but not just as a defensive tool. We need to use it to shape the hive mind's evolution, guide them down a path of our choosing. The idea was audacious. The aliens had been trying to match the hive mind's complexity, to outthink it with increasingly sophisticated technology. Sarah was proposing the opposite, using simple, fundamental principles to manipulate their enemy's own evolution. Admiral Zenith's thoughts brushed against Sarah's mind. You're suggesting we use their own nature against them, like a martial artist using an opponent's momentum. Exactly. Every time they adapt, they follow these mathematical principles. If we can understand these principles better than they do, we can predict not just their next move, but their next 100 moves. The war room's displays flickered as another wave of attacks began. The hive mind ships moved with terrible precision, their formations shifting like the patterns in a kaleidoscope. But now, watching through the lens of Sarah's algorithm, the aliens could begin to see what she saw. The underlying order in the chaos, the mathematical beauty in the destruction. The next phase of attacks will target our quantum communication networks, Sarah announced, her algorithm highlighting vulnerable nodes across the galaxy. They're not just attacking our defenses, they're attacking our ability to coordinate our responses. Xlith's tendrils curled in resignation. Our neural networks cannot process the data fast enough to counter these attacks. Perhaps we should consider implementing your system. It was the moment Sarah had been waiting for, but she felt no triumph. The algorithm was ready, but deploying it would reveal their hand to the hive mind. Once they did that, there would be no going back. Either her understanding of the fundamental patterns would prove correct, or her neural implant pinged with an urgent message from Earth. The hive mind had been detected at the edges of the solar system, testing their defenses. They were out of time. We need to act now, she said, her voice carrying the weight of certainty. The patterns show that the hive mind is building towards something big. And if we don't start shaping their evolution soon, we may not get another chance. The alien representatives looked at each other, their various forms expressing different shades of concern and desperation. Finally, High Commander Vexthor spoke for them all. Deploy your system, Dr. Chen. May your simple mathematics prove stronger than our advanced technology. Sarah's hands moved across her console, initiating the sequence that would activate Earth's defense network. As the algorithm came online, streams of data began flowing through her neural implant. The real test was about to begin. Red emergency lighting bathed Earth's primary defense center in an eerie glow as Dr. Sarah Chen raced through the crowded corridors. The hive mind had launched its first direct assault on Earth's solar system, testing the very defense system they had mocked just days earlier. Technicians and military personnel rushed between stations, their faces illuminated by the glow of holographic displays showing the approaching swarm. Status report, Sarah commanded as she entered the central command hub. The massive circular room was filled with rows of operators interfacing directly with her algorithm through neural links. Dr. Marcus Wong, her chief systems analyst, looked up from his station. The hive mind is probing our outer defense grid. They're using attack patterns we've never seen before, completely different from what they used against the Meridians or the Arcturus Legion. Sarah's neural implant connected with the facility's mainframe, flooding her consciousness with data streams. The algorithm was already processing the new patterns, comparing them against its database of known hive mind behaviors. What she saw made her blood run cold. "They're testing us," she whispered. "Every probe, every feint. They're trying to determine if we can see the patterns they're creating." The main display showed the Hivemund fleet approaching Neptune's orbit. Their ships moved in perfect synchronization, forming and reforming into complex geometric patterns that seemed to defy conventional military strategy. To most observers, it would appear random, even chaotic. But Sarah's algorithm saw the truth. "Look at this," she highlighted a series of movements. "They're not just testing our defenses, they're communicating." Admiral Zena, who had insisted on being present for Earth's first major engagement, floated closer to the display. "Communicating what?" "They know we've been predicting their movements. This isn't just an attack, it's an intelligence test. They're trying to determine exactly how much we understand about their nature." As if to confirm her words, the Hivemind fleet suddenly split into 7 distinct groups, each executing a different attack pattern. The algorithm's predictions began updating in real time, highlighting probable trajectories and tactical objectives. "Dr. Chen," one of the operators called out, "the patterns, they're beginning to match with known mathematical sequences. Fibonacci, prime number distributions, even some we've only theorized about." Sarah's mind raced. The hive mind wasn't just testing their defenses, it was challenging them intellectually, trying to determine the limits of their understanding. Each attack pattern was like a question in a cosmic mathematics exam. "They're evolving faster than we anticipated," Marcus noted, his fingers flying over his console. "The algorithm is having trouble keeping up with the pattern variations." But Sarah saw something else in the data. "No, we're not falling behind. They're deliberately slowing down at key moments, giving us time to analyze each pattern before moving to the next. They want to know if we can solve their puzzles." The assembled staff watched in a mixture of awe and terror as the Hivemind fleet executed increasingly complex maneuvers. Each formation was a mathematical equation written in starships and energy weapons. Each attack run was a theorem waiting to be proved or disproved. "We need to respond." Admiral Zena's thoughts carried an urgent edge. "Not just defensively, but in kind. Show them we understand." Sarah nodded, her hands moving across her neural interface. "Configure our defensive grid to mirror their patterns, but with our own variations. Let's show them we can speak their language and improve upon it." Earth's defense platforms began to move, their formations shifting to create counter-patterns to the Hivemind's displays. Where the alien ships showed Fibonacci spirals, Earth's defenses responded with prime number arrays. When the Hivemind demonstrated wave-function mathematics, humanity answered with quantum probability distributions. "They're responding," Marcus reported, excitement creeping into his voice. "Their attack patterns are becoming more elegant, more refined." Sarah watched as the cosmic dance continued. The Hivemind fleet had stopped its advance, now fully engaged in this mathematical dialogue. Each side presented increasingly sophisticated patterns, like mathematicians exchanging proofs. "This isn't just a test anymore," Sarah realized. "It's a conversation." But then something changed. A new pattern emerged from the Hivemind fleet, something the algorithm hadn't predicted. The ships began arranging themselves into a formation that seemed to defy the very mathematical principles they had been demonstrating. "What are they doing?" Admiral Zena's form flickered with concern. Sarah studied the data streaming through her neural implant, her mind racing to understand. The new pattern seemed familiar somehow, but she couldn't quite. Then it hit her. "It's not a test," she breathed. It's a warning. The hive mind fleet suddenly accelerated, their ships breaking formation and streaming away from the solar system at incredible speeds. Within moments, they had vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind only echoes in Earth's sensor networks. They're gone, Marcus announced, bewilderment clear in his voice. Just like that. Why would they? But Sarah was already analyzing the final pattern they had shown, her algorithm breaking down its components. What she found sent chills down her spine. Get me a secure channel to the Galactic Defense Council, she ordered. Now. As her staff scrambled to comply, Sarah stared at the decoded pattern on her display. The hive mind hadn't just been testing their mathematical understanding. They had been trying to warn them about something. Something that threatened not just humanity or the alien civilizations, but the hive mind itself. What did they show us? Admiral Zena asked, sensing her distress. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. A pattern that shouldn't exist. A mathematical sequence that breaks every natural law we know. Either the hive mind has discovered something impossible, or something is coming that defies the very mathematics that govern our universe. The Galactic Defense Council chamber had never been so silent. Dr. Sarah Chen stood before the assembled representatives, the holographic displays behind her showing the impossible pattern the hive mind had revealed. Even the usually dismissive High Commander Vexthor sat motionless, his crystalline form dulled with concern. The pattern violates every known law of mathematics, Sarah explained, her voice echoing in the hushed chamber. It's like finding a number that exists between 1 and 2, but isn't a fraction or decimal. It simply shouldn't be possible. Xlith's tendrils moved slowly, processing the information. Could this be another test? A deception? No, Admiral Zena's ethereal form pulsed with certainty. The hive mind was afraid. I felt it during their retreat. Whatever this pattern represents, it terrifies them. Sarah's neural implant buzzed with urgent data from Earth's defense network. New readings were coming in from deep space probes, showing disturbances in the fabric of space-time itself. The algorithm was struggling to process the data, producing predictions that seemed to contradict basic reality. We're detecting similar patterns forming naturally in space, she announced, updating the holographic display. They're like tears in the mathematical foundation of the universe. And they're spreading. The council erupted in worried discussions. The Meridian Collective's biomechanical processors were reporting system-wide failures as they tried to analyze the anomalies. The Arcturus Legion's quantum computers simply shut down when presented with the calculations. Dr. Chen, Xlith's voice carried an edge of desperation. Your algorithm is the only system that can even process this data. What does it tell you? Sarah hesitated. The predictions were so bizarre, so fundamentally wrong. That part of her wanted to dismiss them as system errors, but she knew better. The algorithm had never been wrong before. Something is coming through these tears, she said finally. Something that doesn't operate according to our universe's mathematics. The hive mind didn't just discover these anomalies. They were running from them. As if to emphasize her words, the chamber's displays suddenly flickered. New alerts flashed across multiple sectors. Hive mind fleets were appearing everywhere, but not to attack. They were evacuating entire regions of space. By the eternal stars, High Commander Vexthor whispered, his crystalline form resonating with fear. Look at their flight patterns. Sarah's algorithm was already processing the data. The hive mind's retreat wasn't chaotic. It followed the same mathematical principles as before, but now those patterns were being disrupted by something else. Something that broke the very rules the hive mind relied upon. We need to coordinate, she declared. The hive men try to warn us because they know they can't fight this alone. Whatever's coming, it threatens all of us. Admiral Zena floated forward. The hive mind operates on pure mathematical logic. If these anomalies violate that logic, they're more vulnerable than any of us. They need our chaos, our ability to think beyond pure mathematics. Sarah nodded, her mind racing. That's why they tested us. They needed to know if we could understand their language well enough to help them, but also if we could think in ways they couldn't. The chamber's displays updated again, showing new tiers forming across the galaxy. The algorithm's predictions became increasingly strange. Space-time probabilities that shouldn't exist, quantum states that defied fundamental laws. Our weapons will be useless, Exlith realized. Our technology, our defenses, everything we've built relies on the mathematics this entity ignores. Not everything, Sarah countered. She pulled up new displays, showing human neural patterns. Human consciousness doesn't follow pure mathematical logic. We can understand the math, but we can also break from it. Think irrationally. Make intuitive leaps. The alien representatives stared at the neural patterns, where the hive mind's processes followed strict mathematical rules. Human thought patterns showed creative chaos. Logic and intuition intertwined. We need to merge our approaches, Sarah continued. The hive mind's perfect mathematical precision, combined with humanity's ability to break from pure logic, a hybrid defense that can operate both within and outside mathematical law. High Commander Vexthor's form brightened slightly. And our technologies. The Meridian's biomechanical systems, our quantum processors, the Zethklis psychic networks. We'll need them all, Sarah confirmed, but used in new ways, ways that don't rely solely on mathematical certainty. A new alert sounded. The largest tear yet had appeared at the edge of known space. Through it, sensors detected something moving. Something vast. The algorithm's predictions became scrambled, showing possibilities that contradicted each other. We don't have much time, Sarah announced, her voice steady despite the fear gripping her chest. We need to establish contact with the hive mind. Form an alliance. Share what we know. The council chamber erupted in activity. The same aliens who had mocked Earth's primitive technology days ago were now looking to humanity for leadership. Sarah's neural implant buzzed constantly as data poured in from across the galaxy. More tiers forming, more impossible readings. Dr. Chen, Admiral Zena's thoughts touched her mind. The pattern the hive mind showed us. Could it be a key? Not just a warning, but a clue to understanding these entities. Sarah's fingers flew across her neural interface, the algorithm processing this new perspective. Yes, yes, the pattern isn't just impossible, it's impossible in a specific way. If we can understand how it breaks mathematical law, we might be able to predict how these entities think. But as she worked, a new realization dawned. The tiers in space weren't random. They too followed a pattern, one that was horrifyingly familiar. They're forming a larger pattern, she whispered, one that matches ancient symbols found in human caves, in our oldest myths. Patterns our ancestors drew when they tried to describe. Describe what? Exlith demanded. Before Sarah could answer, every display in the chamber went dark. When they reactivated, they showed a single image, a pattern that made the impossible mathematics of the tiers look simple by comparison. A pattern that spoke of something older than mathematics itself. The true test was about to begin. Everything changed when the entities emerged from the tiers in spacetime. They defied description. Shapes that seemed to shift between dimensions, structures that violated every law of physics. The combined fleets of Earth, the alien civilizations, and the hive-mind hung in space, watching as reality itself bent around these impossible visitors. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in Earth's primary defense center, her neural implant struggling to process what the sensors were showing. The algorithm, humanity's greatest achievement in pattern recognition, was producing results that read like fever dreams. They're not just breaking mathematical laws, she announced to the assembled representatives of Earth and the Galactic Defense Council. They're rewriting them. Every moment they exist in our universe, they're changing the fundamental rules that govern reality. The main display showed the entities spreading across the galaxy, leaving chaos in their wake. Wherever they passed, the basic constants of the universe began to shift. The speed of light, the gravitational constant, even the relationship between space and time. All became fluid, unpredictable. The hive mind's warning makes sense now. Admiral Zena's thoughts carried a note of awe. They recognized these entities as something that could unravel the very mathematics they're built upon. Sarah watched as another tear opened, larger than any before. The entities flowing through it moved with purpose now, forming patterns that seemed to mock the very concept of geometry. Her algorithm was adapting, learning, but every prediction it made was obsolete before it could be acted upon. Then she noticed something. Something so subtle it had almost slipped past even the algorithm's analysis. "They're not random," she whispered, her fingers flying across her neural interface. "Even their chaos follows rules. Not mathematical ones. But what?" High Commander Vexthor demanded, his crystalline form pulsing with tension. "Narrative rules. Story logic. These patterns, they're like the ones we see in human myths, in our oldest stories. They don't follow mathematics. They follow archetypes." The assembled aliens stared at her in confusion, but the hive mind's representatives, present through holographic avatars, showed immediate understanding. Their forms shifted, adapting to this new perspective. "Look," Sarah highlighted various patterns in the entity's movements. "These formations mirror ancient human cave paintings, symbols found in every culture's mythology. They're not operating on mathematical logic, they're operating on narrative logic." A new alert sounded. The entities had begun a coordinated attack on multiple fronts. Ships from all species were being torn apart, their technology useless against weapons that ignored physical laws. But Sarah saw something else in the data, something that gave her hope. "They're telling a story," she realized. "Every attack, every formation. It's following narrative causality instead of mathematical causality. And stories have rules of their own." Her hands moved across the neural interface with renewed purpose. The algorithm began to adapt, incorporating new parameters based not on mathematical principles, but on narrative ones. Heroes and villains, conflicts and resolutions, setup and payoff. Ancient storytelling rules that predated mathematics itself. "Dr. Chen," Exlith's tendrils writhed with confusion. "Are you suggesting we fight these entities with stories?" "Not exactly," Sarah replied, her mind racing. "But we need to understand their logic. Mathematics is just one way of describing the universe. These entities use a different language, one humanity has been speaking since we first gathered around fires to tell tales." A hive mind's avatars suddenly shifted, their forms reorganizing into new patterns. They had grasped the concept and were already adapting their strategies. Their ships began moving in formations that followed narrative arcs rather than tactical efficiency. "We need to combine approaches," Sarah announced. "The hive mind's mathematical precision, alien technology, and humanity's understanding of story logic. Make ourselves part of their narrative, but on our terms." The assembled fleet began to move, guided by this new hybrid strategy. Where the entities expected chaos, they found order. Where they expected mathematics, they found mythology. Every action was both calculated and intuitive, both logical and narrative. And slowly, impossibly, it began to work. The entities' attacks became less effective as the combined fleet learned to operate within their story logic while maintaining mathematical precision. The algorithm predicted their actions not through equations but through narrative necessity, anticipating their moves by understanding the story they were trying to tell. "They're retreating," Marcus announced, his voice filled with disbelief. The entities were pulling back, their impossible forms twisting in what might have been confusion. They had encountered something they didn't expect. Opponents who could speak both languages, who could bridge the gap between mathematical truth and narrative truth. The tiers in spacetime began to close, the entities withdrawing to whatever realm they had emerged from. As they retreated, the fundamental constants of the universe began to stabilize. Mathematics reasserted itself, but now with a new understanding of its own limitations. In the aftermath, As the combined fleet regrouped and began assessing the damage, Sarah stood before the Galactic Defense Council one final time. The aliens who had once mocked Earth's primitive technology now looked at humanity with new respect. "We learned something today," she said, addressing the assembled representatives. "Mathematics isn't the only language of the universe. There are older ways of understanding reality, patterns that exist in stories and myths. The true power comes not from choosing one over the other, but from learning to speak both." The hive mind's avatars shifted in agreement, their forms now incorporating elements of both mathematical precision and narrative flow. They had evolved, as had all of them, learning to see beyond their own limitations. Admiral Zena's thoughts touched Sarah's mind one last time. Perhaps this is why the entities targeted our galaxy. They sensed the potential here, the possibility of beings who could bridge the gap between different ways of understanding reality. Sarah nodded, watching as the last readings from the tiers faded from her displays. The algorithm had been permanently changed by the encounter, now capable of processing both mathematical and narrative patterns. It was no longer just a defense system. It was a translator between different languages of reality. "We should be ready," she said, looking out at the stars. "They'll be back. And next time, they'll have learned from us just as we learned from them." But she wasn't afraid. Humanity had proven once again that its greatest strength lay not in advanced technology or mathematical precision, but in its ability to adapt, to understand, to bridge the gaps between different ways of thinking. In the end, it wasn't silicon circuits or quantum computers that had saved them, but the ancient human gift for seeing patterns in chaos and finding meaning in the impossible. The stars seemed to twinkle in agreement, their light carrying both mathematical certainty and the endless possibility of stories yet to be told.